Just a quick note, this is a review video, but I did my very best to avoid any major spoilers. I will still discuss certain elements from this movie, but I do it very broadly and never too specifically. So if you're worried about spoilers, hopefully this is a review that you can enjoy all the same. Thanks for watching. There are a number of ways in which a movie can set itself apart. Maybe it's great cinematography or the fantastic writing, good actors, crazy effects work, really anything that allows it to feel unique to its audience or special in some way. And there are rare occasions, only a few times every decade, when every single one of those elements is hit at once and we get a true masterpiece that lasts far beyond its theatrical release and can be seen as something artistically important and beautiful. The first Matrix movie did just that. It took every single element that we knew to expect in a big budget action movie and kicked it up. The writing was smart and fresh, and the effects were truly revolutionary. They set off a new standard in a similar way to the shockwaves that industrial light and magic left in the wake of Star Wars. It was a genre-defining, era-specific film that felt fantastic and, important. The second and third films were somewhat lacking for most reviewers, living squarely in that massive shadow of their predecessor. They were fun, action-packed, and beautifully shot, but lacked that extra flair that made the first so special. As I've gotten older, I actually really enjoy watching the second and third Matrix films, but more for their pretension and philosophy than anything else. I never stopped being a nerd, and a pretentious one at that. So it feels like a collegiate dining hall argument of classic philosophical conundrums, and I love that. So while they don't quite hit where the first film did, they have a spot in my heart and in my library. And they did a fairly decent job of concluding the Christ Arc trilogy in a fulfilling way. Enter 2021. Spider-Man No Way Home is mashing together old franchises with new and seeing enormous success. The multiverse is a piece of almost every single property at this point, and it feels as though every brand is looking for an excuse to reboot old ideas to new audiences and new money. The Matrix 4 announcement left me feeling apprehension and dread, not really two emotions that you want to feel about a franchise that you love. See, I love this trilogy, and I couldn't think of any possible way that they could bring back this franchise without sullying my memories and ruining some of the magic that they had captured in my youth. The Wachowskis reshaped cinema in 1999. Maybe they should leave it alone and focus on other projects. That sounds smart, right? But then I saw Spider-Man No Way Home, and I felt a surge of nostalgic melancholy and elation bundled together with what had to be one of my favorite theater experiences in my entire life. So maybe she was going to be able to reignite that 12-year-old's love of guns and slow motion mixed with existential philosophy in this 34-year-old bitter adult. The short version, she did not. This film hurt to watch. The introduction felt as though it was filmed by the Sci-Fi Channel in the early 2000s. The pacing couldn't decide if it wanted to be funny or serious, and the plot felt as though it was a great idea that was never fully fleshed out by a team of people that just rushed it onto the page to get the thing done. George Lucas would love it. But perhaps most egregiously, the cinematography that was so iconic and stunning from the first films was replaced by bland, poorly framed, or chaotically shot drivel. Almost every frame in the first film feels as though it was torn from the pages of a very cool comic book. Perhaps that's why the Animatrix made so much sense later on, but this felt like a generic big action flick in the worst and most forgettable way. The sets were probably impressive, but the camera failed to really show that off with any sort of flair for most of the film. The appearances of old characters never really felt as tingly as it did in other cameo-heavy films. Spider-Man No Way Home, maybe. At least the color was free of that weird green tinge from the re-release of the first film, I guess. But setting aside the cinematography and the inconsistent effects work, we still have to contend with that writing and the plot. And my God, they tried their best to make this self-referential monster into something resembling a lesson, but I'll be damned if I was able to really understand what that was. There's so much to pull from the first films. They teach actual courses in college about it, but I feel like they can be reliably reduced to this: the truth will set you free. And yes, I am missing a lot, but for argument's sake, I like the simplicity here. And this is very much in the same vein as those early films, but somehow manages to feel disingenuous and even angry at itself for existing at all. Almost as though Lana is being forced to make this movie tied down in a chair in the Warner Brothers basement. There's even a part where they reference Warner Brothers wanting a sequel and them needing to put one out even if Thomas Anderson doesn't want to. And normally, this type of reference would have me giggling with malicious glee at the big conglomerate getting bullied by the movie that they paid to make, but somewhere between 90s cereal commercials and TikTok brand accounts becoming overly self-aware, I stopped believing these sorts of things were cool. In fact, it feels like WB was so in on the joke that they wrote it themselves, maybe to appear woke to the mobs of people whose cash they just bathed in. I don't know. The humor felt strangely out of step with the movie as a whole, as though they couldn't decide if it was a satire of itself, or a smart meta commentary on modern movie making, or a sci-fi thriller continuing the traditions of a classic franchise. And if it had managed to choose one of those paths and dive in headfirst to fully commit, I would have been much more forgiving of its pitfalls, but as it stands, it's a film that doesn't have an identity, and that's ironic. In a franchise that was built upon the idea of shaping yourself and creating a true version of you. I went into this movie with exceedingly low expectations, and even then, it managed to dip below them. I think it can be enjoyed best maybe while imagining that it's an indie film, meant to extrapolate on the existing Matrix properties. Through that lens, we can forgive the strange pacing issues and rookie camera work, the fight scenes not living up to their lore, and the strange feeling of made-for-television that most of this adventure encompasses. If we pretend this movie didn't have a budget of $190 million and wasn't crafted by one of the people responsible for bullet time in Hollywood, maybe we could leave feeling a little better about it. But really, I think your time is better spent watching Spider-Man No Way Home again. Here's hoping they leave Neo and Trinity alone now, and the Wachowskis can maybe focus on something else. It seems pretty obvious that they want to. 2 out of 5. Watch it on HBO if you have nothing else to do. Thanks for watching. Peace.